Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk about Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley, the third fight from the top. Really excited for this one. This is a fight between the former champion and the star of the division. Petr Yan is coming off a split decision loss to Aljamain Sterling. Razor thin fight. I did think Aljo won, but still, Petr Yan is one point on one judge's scorecard away from being in the co-main event with TJ Dillashaw. That fight was that close. Instead, he's underneath Aljo and he's fighting Sean O'Malley, which maybe can be considered a professional setback. But like I said, O'Malley's the star of the division. So for a guy that has to take a step back like Petr Yan, you may as well take on the star. And for Sean O'Malley, who has to take a step up, I look at it like that Pedro Munoz fight never really happened because it didn't hurt him or help him professionally. So it's as if it never happened, really. But he had to take a step up. That's what everybody was calling for with Sean O'Malley. And he skipped over everybody. And now he's fighting Petr Yan. So really big kudos to Sean O'Malley for taking this fight. I know the fans have been clamoring for it. And O'Malley's even teased fans saying, I'm going to fight bums and cans for, the same money. Well, here he is. He's fighting Petr Yan, and I think it's smart because O'Malley, of all the fighters at the top, I do think Petr Yan is one of the more favorable matchups for Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is a really good rangy striker, moves so well, and I think he's very powerful too in the division. And he presents a lot of problems for anybody. I think that guy wins round one against anybody in the division, aside from maybe Aljo if he's able to take him down or whatever. But most guys, aside from Pedro Munoz, Munoz is the only guy that I thought was competitive with O'Malley in round one. I still don't know who won it. I guess that's because there was never an official ending to it. But I think I scored round one for Munoz. And that was the only time I've ever scored round one against Sean O'Malley. The thing is with Yan is a slow starter. He's a very slow starter. He's paid for it in the past, and I expect him to lose round one here. The only thing is he knows that's his reputation. He knows this is a 3-round fight, and maybe he should try to fight differently. So there is that, but still, traits are traits, Traits are things that you can identify, the consistencies that fighters show, or anybody shows, or whatever. But Yan is a slow starter. That's one of his traits. Just like O'Malley, it has weak legs, I want to say. That's one of his traits. It starts to happen more than once, it becomes a trait. And I do think that is a weakness of Sean O'Malley's. We saw him compromise against Andre Sukumtov, who fought like an idiot. Still, he sure regrets that to this day. And Marlon Vera, Chito Vera, took out Sean O'Malley's legs, hit him, whatever he had, his leg was stunned or whatever the hell they call it. And that led to him being defeated, despite what he says, and finished, despite what he says, knocked out. I thought he was legitimately knocked out in that fight. It was a flash knockout or whatever, but that was the end for him. And he would have been pounded unconscious for sure if he was, given more time. So that was an eye-opening loss for O'Malley, and that could happen here. But Vera is the opportunist, the biggest opportunist in the UFC, and I think he's more dangerous even than Petr Yan. Yan is still one of those better fighters, though. I think he's a better fighter than Chito. I think he's a better fighter than O'Malley, but that doesn't mean he's going to win. I think I would be much more sure of him winning in a 5-round fight. In a 3-round fight, I'm not so sure, especially because I'm almost sure that O'Malley wins round one. And then after that, while I do expect Yan to take over, I'm betting on O'Malley. I do think O'Malley he's shown plenty of heart. Like I said, I thought he was knocked out against Vera, but he didn't stop fighting. And he's shown plenty of heart, especially in that Sukumtov fight that I mentioned, really, when you consider the shape he was in. But on the feet, I think O'Malley will always have an advantage in like that jousting advantage where you saw Corey Sandhagen's advantages dissipate pretty quickly against Petr Yan, and it was just Yan making reads, as they say, dropping round one, and then he was just schooling Corey Sandhagen. I don't see that being a path to victory for Petr Yan here. I don't see that being an option here because Sean O'Malley still moves well. Of course, everybody slows down, but O'Malley's able to move well for 3 rounds, I believe, better than Corey Sandhagen was. His movement won't be compromised. And O'Malley is also much better at fighting long. He's a longer, taller fighter like Corey Sandhagen, but O'Malley's a jouster. He fights long. And I do think his punching is powerful, more powerful than most guys in the division, certainly than Corey Sandhagen. So I think this is a really tough stylistic matchup for Petr Yan, where he's very much in danger of losing it. I've convinced myself he's going to lose it. I guess if I had a gun to my head, I don't know if I would say the words O'Malley, but I'm saying them now with no gun to my head, and I'm absolutely betting on him. I bet on O'Malley to win. I like his money line at plus 200. I got it a little higher, but even anything close to that, I still think it's worth it. And I also liked O'Malley via decision, which you can get at plus 500. O'Malley is going to win round 1, I believe. And based on that and how he fights and, Yan, he's lost Aljamain Sterling, but he had 2 really close fights with Jimmy Rivera and Jim Soo Son. Yeah, one of his first UFC fights. He's had really close battles, 3-round battles. He's prevailed, and especially in the Jimmy Rivera fight, he stole those rounds, those first 2 rounds, by dropping Jimmy Rivera at the very end of the round. Otherwise, it was Jimmy Rivera just outboxing Petr Yan. So I do think that Yan is a little overvalued here. And I've hammered O'Malley. I think O'Malley's the way to play this. And, I got to give you a prediction. I will step up and say Sean O'Malley wins a decision. I think it'll be not an eye-opening upset, but it'll be a pretty big upset that will catapult him into title contention. And it's gonna be a fun fight no matter what. Like I could talk about it, but seeing Yan actually lose a 3-round fight to Sean O'Malley will be a sight to behold. So I'm picking him, I'm betting on him, and rub my face in it afterwards Sunday morning. All right, like, share, subscribe, all that horseshit.